Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. This is Stan Houston. Interesting ideas on a Friday. Future Friday. We flow into the weekend and we look forward to those future events of the weekend. We do need to do the right things to make it a good weekend. And of course, it's kind of where we finish up the week. And we have to give a little bit of thought to next week. Future Friday. And you got the title right. What would you do if I could give you more power? If I had the power to increase your power in life, what would that mean to you? What would it feel like? What would it look like? What would you do with it? Just simply, I'll give you more power, and you can have it. What would that be like for you? Well, I've got a few thoughts on that might be helpful for you. That's part of Future Friday. If you'll give me about 15 minutes, maybe it'll even make for a better day and a better weekend. Who knows? Maybe a better future. The program begins right now. Okay, here we go. Now, I like to keep us up to date. Sometimes you can learn more here by accident than most places by design. And as I often say, if it's truly important in life, it's probably not in the news. Right now, most of the things that you hear in the news are not really important. And you can just let that sit on your head for a while and perhaps figure out why that is true. However, what I did discover is something that I had predicted would happen. We all know that the phenomenon of cutting the cable, or of cutting the cord, which is cutting off cable TV, is an accelerating thing. And now, as per my prediction, it has now been supposedly justified and verified, and I'm always curious to know how they do that, is that streaming is now outpacing cabling. That more people and more minutes are being spent by people doing streaming than they are by being involved in a cable program. And that, of course, is one of the reasons why the cable companies have to keep raising their rates, because they've got to try and get as much money as possible before perhaps they go out of business, which might be rather soon if that continues. Also, it's very interesting that I've also said that in the future, here I am, 50 years a radio guy, and I really don't listen to the radio that much anymore. If I want music, I get the music I want, and there are thousands of ways of doing that. And for the most part, if I want information, most of the stuff I'd like to learn about is not on the radio anymore. It's in small podcasts, small programs that are suited to me about things that I really care about, more than whatever that the radio station wants to talk about. The disc jockey, and I've been one, and the news announcer, and I've been one, and the program producer, and I've been one. We make the choice, and I like to make my own choices. So, in effect, could it be that in 3 to 5 years that traditional radio as we know it could be gone? And that's why you need to learn how to be a podcaster, how to use the digital media, and to find your audience and find a way through the digital media to speak to it. I'm just going to let that sit on your head, because those are all things that are happening right now. And let me tell you this. A couple things. I remember it when I came across the book, and I don't know why I came across it, but it changed a lot of my life. It was called Real Power, and it was written by a woman named Janet Hagberg, who turned up to actually live in my hometown of Minneapolis, and had actually lived in the very neighborhood that I was then presently living. And she had become kind of a world-class consultant, and she wrote a book called Real Power. That book illustrated so much of life reality to me. If you want to understand the power game or what's going on in the power plays, if you want to better understand the power politics of organizations and of characters and connivers and crooks and cons and whatever else, knowing how people gain and use power, real power, will be helpful to you. And there's a great lesson in how you might get real power. I also took a class during my graduate days at the University of Minnesota, and I went back and got my graduate degree the right way. After I'd already had about 25 years of life, then I took a graduate degree, and that was because, hey, I could now better understand because I had 25 years of stars and scars in my life, and so I could better understand what was going on, and some of the things that I learned I already knew, but now I knew more about them and sometimes the reasons for them. Smart thing to do. If you're going to go back and get an MBA or a graduate degree, no, wait until you're at least 40 and then go back and get it. And by the way, it'll mean a lot more for you and with you. Just think about that. Don't go get your graduate degree right after college. Bad move. Don't do it. Now, I took a class and it was called Power and Authority. And it was one of the most unusual classes that I've ever had. And I trusted it because the man who was leading it was a guy who I had come to trust profoundly. His name was Dr. George Shapiro, and an incredible guy who actually learned his communication, as he said, first of all, serving in the Korean War, and then working with various business corporations, being a family therapist, and then also the fact that he had then moved into communication, and he also always said with a smile, and the fact that I am a Jew married to a Roman Catholic and we're raising children together teaches me a lot about how to run an organization and do communication. Incredible man. I hope he's still around, but he's obviously advanced if he is. But blessings on his name, Dr. George Shapiro, University of Minnesota. Well, what I'm trying to say is this. Power and authority was oftentimes about how do you get power? Is authority the source of power? Can you have power without authority? Can you have power without power and without authority but have real power? Can you have power by just persuasion? Can you have authority just by having the art of persuasion? Or are most people expressing their power and their authority not because they can persuade, but because they can punish? It was interesting. By the way, if you're trying to get more sophisticated in your leadership, ask someone like me to help you figure out how the power games are played in your company, in your business, and in life, so that you can be better at having. And this is what happened. Janet Hagberg, who wrote the book, when I finally met her, I took my book and asked her, of course, to sign it, and she simply wrote in the words, "More power to you." Wow. More power to you. So here's my question. If I could give more power to you today, and in many ways we feel so powerless. Let me just give you an example from yesterday. Some of you probably saw it. Some guy, a felon, a bad guy, a thug, went up to a man in New York City and just for no reason at all went and slammed the guy right across the head, knocked him cold conk out. The guy is injured badly. He's in the hospital. And the guy just stood there. Eventually, the police arrested him, and the authorities let him go. Because you know the deal of the bail and stuff. And didn't you just feel angry? You were powerless to do anything about that. Here was this terrible thing happening to an innocent person, and the thug is allowed by, quote, the power and authority that be, to just walk free. And when those things happen, you just kind of say, I wish I had power to do something about it. And of course, more and more in our lives, what is happening, and the pandemic made this very, very clear, and the men and women who were in our governing people used their power in such ways that we were totally depowered of a lot of things we wanted to be able to do or thought we should do, or we didn't agree with the people and the authorities that were there. So we felt powerless. And by the way, whenever people feel powerless, watch out. Bad things happen. Bad things happen. Trump was right when he said the present situation could get bad. It could get worse. And what he meant by that is probably something that he understands, because he understands power, because he was in power relationships all of his life, in particularly the construction industry, the transportation industry, the hospitality industry, and then dealing with the politics of New York City. But here we go. Please take time right now, okay? Think about this. If you had more power, there was kind of a magic power potion or blessing that I could give to you, what do you think you would want it to be like? What kind of power would you like? What would you do with it? What would you do with it if you had more power? By the way, I've also plagiarized that wonderful little quote. I'm now putting together with a group of people who are very convinced that there is power, particularly in the art of prayer. And we've named the podcast, which launches today, called More Power to You. A prayer podcast. More Power to You. A prayer podcast. I'll tell you more, but we're just going to close it up in a few minutes with a little challenge. I'm Stan Houston. The program is Interesting Ideas. We'll be right back to close it up so you can make the best of your Friday and have a good weekend. Here we go. I probably can give you more power because each of you can be empowered by yourself or with the help of somebody else. Of course, that's what the word empowerment means. It means to have more power. Would you like spiritual power, emotional power, financial power, relational power, political power, physical power? What kind of power would you like? You can't have them all. Choose one. Okay? Which would be most important to you? And how would it express itself? If you could have more physical power, what would that mean? If you could have more spiritual power, more emotional power, more positional power, more political power, more financial power, how would that be expressed? Can you think that through? I would challenge you to do that. And then, what would you do with it? I oftentimes had this kind of question for my clients when I was coaching them. I said, if you had $25 million, tax-free, and so you no longer have to worry about paying the bills or having a roof over your head, clothes on your body, and food on your table. You have $25 million. What would you do with it? I'd love to hear your answers. And in fact, I'm going to be calling on 2 or 3 people, and I hope they will join me. Maybe you want to raise your hand and say, I'd like to talk about that too. What would you do if you had more power in your life? What kind would it be? How would you express it? And what would you do with it? Would the world be a better place or not? Would you be less fearful or not? Would you be more happy or not? Would you be more loving and loved or not? Again, I'm Stan Houston. It's my job to challenge myself all the time. And my friend, what I just said to you, I said most importantly to me, because I have to figure it out too. Let's see if we can be helpful to one another, because we are living in an age where so many of us feel powerless about our life and our business and the situation. And so if there was a source of power that could empower us, what would it be like? And what would we do? All the best and blessings to you. And when I gave you a blessing, I gave you some power. Blessings to you. Have a good weekend. I'm going to take the weekend off. We'll be back on Monday. All the best to you. Bye for now.